Hello and welcome to DFS Coach Talk. It is Saturday, September 25th, 2021. I'm Andrew Hanson alongside Josh Crash Davis, Mr. Wisconsin. And man, the sports world is humming up there, Josh. We've got your Green Bay Packers here on Primetime. We've got the Ryder Cup going on up there, USA doing great. And it's Bob Uecker night too.
Yeah, it's a big weekend in Wisconsin. They didn't start out the greatest with the Badgers, but hopefully the rest of the team can come through.
That's right. And we'll start off here with your Packers and San Fran with the Sunday night primetime game. Then we'll cover the Monday night matchup between Philly and Dallas, the NFC East showdown, and get you ready for these exciting contests. So why don't you kick it off with Green Bay? We've got a 50.5 over-under, but they're 3-point underdogs on the road against San Francisco. What's the story with that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is a lot to do with the recent, when San Francisco's been healthy and Jimmy Garoppolo's in, they've really dominated this matchup, and I think that has a lot to do with it. Because in my mind, these are pretty even teams, but recency bias has kind of favored San Francisco, so I think that the odds makers are looking at that pretty heavily. And Green Bay is dealing with some injuries. They've got of course, David Bakhtiari is going to be out for the first 6 weeks of the year. And now Elton Jenkins, who's been a very good replacement for Bakhtiari, he's going to be out tomorrow. So they're going to have to make some shuffling on the offensive line, probably going to move Billy Turner from right tackle over to left tackle and then bring up Dennis Kelly to right tackle. Now, he did start for Tennessee last year, all 16 games at right tackle. So hopefully he's going to be somebody that's going to solidify that line and alleviate some of those concerns that they might have without Jenkins.
Yeah, well, speaking of concerns, it was rough after week one, of course, with Green Bay and that dud, but they turned it around well against Detroit. So you got to love the momentum there. And Aaron Jones, man, what a week.
Oh, yeah.
4 touchdowns against Detroit. So do you think Green Bay is going to feature him again, or do you think it'll be more of a Devontae Adams in the passing attack?
Yeah, I think it's going to be more of a Devontae Adams week this week. He's had a lot of big games in San Francisco recently. Last year, he had a 10 catch, 173 yards and a touchdown. He had even in the NFC Championship game late, he got a late score and had a big pass play against Richard Sherman. So I definitely think Devontae Adams is going to get a lot of targets. It's interesting with Aaron Jones because he actually in week 2 last year had 4 touchdowns against Detroit. So that seems to be that matchup that he really likes. But back to the receiving options, I think Devontae Adams is going to be getting the lion's share of the targets, obviously. And then Marquez Valdes-Scantling is another name to keep an eye on. He did have 2 touchdowns in their game last year when San Francisco was banged up, but I still think that Green Bay wants to get him involved. Aaron Rodgers was talking this week about how he was really disappointed that they weren't able to connect on the 3 big pass plays that they had against Detroit. And I think that he's going to keep looking MVS's way to try and make that connection happen. And so he's somebody that you could keep an eye on this week for another target besides Devontae.
Yeah, man, MVS, that line last week is so deceiving with the goose egg on 4 targets. I mean, that's about the worst. Obviously, a 0 is the worst you can do, but that's about that's the 0 with the most potential I think I've ever seen on 4 targets. He had the slant route inside the 5 that easily could have been a touchdown. Rodgers just missed him. And then he had those 2 routes where he was open deep. He beat the coverage.
Yeah.
If Rodgers hits him in stride, those are 2 touchdowns. So, man, it could have been a monster game for him, but it was a goose egg. So I can see why he'd want to right the ship there and get MVS into the end zone this week.
Yeah, definitely think he's going to try and find him again. So,
what about Cobb and Lazard? Cobb ascending here, got 3 grabs. Lazard backed out of the picture. Do you think that that old connection is going to continue?
Well, Matt LaFleur said this week that he does want to get Randall Cobb some more opportunities. So that could be something that they bring in to their game plan a little bit this week. Maybe some carries out of the backfield, just kind of try and mix it up a little bit. got to do some things because that pass rush is going to be coming after Aaron. So I could see a couple little dump passes to Cobb and maybe a couple targets downfield too. But they definitely, like I said, they want to get him more involved this week. So, and then Lazard, they've really used him a lot in like the screen passing game for blocking because he's their best blocking receiver. And I think they'll continue to do that and help out with the pass rush and stuff. But I think that Lazard could be somebody that could get a target or two in the red zone this week, but there's a lot of mouths to feed in Green Bay's offense right now, and you got Jones and still have Tunyon and they drafted Amari Rogers, so there's a lot of weapons out there.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Jones and Tunyon, funny you should mention them because with Detroit, the way that they were able to get some yardage against Green Bay was passing to the running backs and their tight end.
Right.
The running backs had 16 catches for 121, and then Hawkinson had a big game against them. So are you high on Jones and or Tunyon or any other tight end perhaps?
Yeah, I still like Aaron Jones. I just don't think that this is going to be the week that he has, the big 4 touchdown game like he had last week against Detroit. I think he could maybe get 1 touchdown rushing and maybe 1 receiving, or maybe just 1 total period. And then Tunyon's still going to be a target for the red zone. So I still like Tunyon this week too.
Okay, excellent. Anything else on your Packers before I get into the Niners side?
Yeah, they have a tight end that he missed all of last year. His name's Josiah DeGuara. They drafted him in the 3rd round last year, and they drafted him basically to be their own Kyle Juszczyk. And so he got hurt in week 1 last year against the Vikings. He tore his ACL. He was out for the year. And then he got hurt week 1 in Jacksonville when we were there. Quick fact about that game is his dad was actually sitting a few rows in front of my dad and I. So we actually saw him. His son was, on the field, got hurt with a concussion. And so his dad stood up and everything, and everybody noticed who, he was there and everything, and kind of said a prayer for him, let him know they were thinking about him when he walked out. He walked out of the stadium to go down to the field. But yeah, Josiah DeGuara is a name to keep an eye on, a deep GPP sleeper this week. And probably no one's going to play him, but he's one of those guys that if he gets a touchdown, he could win a tournament for you.
Yeah, that's a good call. I mean, if he's anything like Juszczyk, that's exactly what he would be. He's a guy who can allow you to win a big tournament like a Millie Maker, because we've seen Shanahan just give him a couple catches if he gets in the end zone, then look out at that low price.
Yeah, he's $200 on DraftKings. So
there you go. Can't get any cheaper than that.
Nope.
All right, good stuff. Let me start on the San Fran side. They've managed to get to a 2-0 start here despite all these injuries in the backfield.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think they want to run, but we got to figure out who's there, who's in town, who has enough of a handle on the playbook to get out there. And you look back at, you mentioned the matchup last year, and then of course 2 years ago in the NFC Championship game, that's when they were so successful on the ground with Mostert rushing for almost 300 yards as a team. They passed for less than 100, and Jimmy G was under center, basically just handing off. So we know Shanahan will do that. It wouldn't shock me if they go run heavy again, if they can open up some holes. And according to Pro Football Focus, they have an 80% blocking advantage with this offensive line. So let's dive into the injury report. We know that Mostert obviously has been out for a while. Now Hasty is out. Elijah Mitchell is doubtful. So Trey Sermon, who has 1 carry and 1 concussion, looks to be the lead back. We're recording this on Saturday night. So if that's the case, he's 3,000 on DraftKings, which is a backup running back price.
Yeah.
So he vaults to the top for value for me. This is a must play as the starting running back for San Fran in this matchup. It's just a matter of if you use him in the top spot or not. Right. Then we've got Jock Patrick, a big bruiser out of the XFL. Trenton Cannon, who got a carry here, formerly of the Ravens. And then Kerryon Johnson has just been elevated today from the practice squad. He's only 200. So talk about, $200 players who might make an impact.
Yeah.
We'll see if he's active and gets any snaps. But, any three of those guys are ultra value plays, but you don't need to go there if you can go with Sermon, and we get the information that he's going to be the lead back, which is really what it looks like at this point. So I'm going to have Sermon out there on DraftKings. And then if you look at the passing game, Deebo Samuel's been the go-to guy. He's been doing the heavy lifting this year. Ayuk has been almost completely non-existent. But Deebo is pretty expensive at 9,400. Then you've got Trent Sherfield, only 1,200. He got in the end zone week 1. Jawan Jennings for 1,000. He got in the end zone last week.
Mm-hmm.
Good old Kyle Juszczyk is there. But then there's Kittle. And, he's 8,200, so he's cheaper than Deebo. And he's on my radar. Again, if you look at what Hawkinson did, strong game against Green Bay. Hawkinson is like the wild card here, Josh. Because both of these teams have played Detroit, and he's done well against both of them. So I like Kittle here. He's probably my favorite pass catcher out of the group. What are your thoughts on this passing game?
Yeah, I think Kittle is definitely the name that stands out to me as the one player that we can't let beat us. And he's done that in the past. Outside of the running game, he's kind of set up everything in the past against us. So I think that he's the one guy that we're going to have to really keep an eye on, maybe even have to double team him to make sure he doesn't beat us. I think Jair will probably shadow Deebo Samuel because with Eric Stokes coming up a little bit, I think they feel a little bit more comfortable with their corners on the outside with Stokes and Jair, and they've got Kevin King kind of moved to the slot. So I think they're going to start moving Jair. You saw it a little bit at the end of the game on Monday. They're going to move Jair a little bit. So if Deebo wants to go to the slot, Jair can follow him, or if he wants to stay on the outside, Jair will just follow him out there too. So I think that Deebo is still their main guy, but I just think Jair is going to do a pretty good job of negating that. And so they're going to focus on the run game and getting it to Kittle and maybe a guy like Sherfield or Juszczyk or, just somebody that you're probably not thinking of right away when you think of San Francisco. So
excellent. Nice stuff there with that Green Bay secondary. One of the many excellent traits of Mr. Crash Davis, his breakdown of the Packers. He's also one of our key baseball guys, putting out winning lineups this season. So if you want more of the excellence of Crash Davis, his insight and his lineups, join us at dfscoachdoc.com. Jump in this weekend. You get our football lineups for these primetime games. We give out full lineups on Fanduel and Yahoo for all the primetime games, Sunday night, Monday night, Thursday night. Of course, we have the main slate covered as well. We just did that show earlier today. Go check that out on YouTube. And then we give out the coach's clipboard on DraftKings for the main slate. We give out the core lineups here for these showdowns, GPP, cash builds. So jump in with us, dfscoachtalk.com. We'll send you an email and invite you into our Discord. All right, Josh, let's go to game 2. We have Philly and Dallas. This is a coach talk battle. With Brett and Coach, diehard Eagle and Cowboys fans, respectively. And another close one on paper, 3.5 points, the edge for Dallas in terms of the odds with betus.com.pa. Another similar over-under here, 51.5. Monday night, 8:15 kickoff. Both teams 1-1. So a lot on the line here early in the season. Why don't you start us off again with the visiting team, the Eagles?
Yeah, so the Eagles, they just recently activated Zach Ertz off the COVID-19 list. And so that's going to be another option for Jalen Hurts to look for, especially in the red zone, obviously. He's been a great, Eagle over the years, and I would expect him to have some big contributions this year. If he didn't plan on making contributions, I think he probably would have left. So That was a big question mark for the Eagles this offseason, was whether or not he was going to stay around or not. And then on the injury front, the Eagles do have their starting tackle, Jordan Mailata, who's going to be out. And so Andre Dillard, their rookie from 2019, is going to be starting in his place. He actually hasn't started since 2019. And when he did start, he struggled pretty badly. So there's a lot of concerns about how he's going to hold up in pass protection this week. But they are going to be going with Andre Dillard. So,
yep. And, protecting Hurts is important because he is really the key to this offense here. Sort of like Kyler Murray, as we were talking about on the main slate show. And Dallas has given up a lot of passing yards with, Brady and company in week one. We know that Hurts likes to run it though as well. What do you think about Hurts here? Obviously one of the expensive guys, but can you possibly have a lineup without him?
I don't think you can. Hurts has only faced Dallas once, but when he did last year, he had 411 combined yards, 342 yards passing, and then 9 carries for 69 yards on the ground. So, I mean, at 411 yards of offense, that's pretty substantial. So I think that's definitely something you're going to have to keep in your lineup. And last week, I made the mistake of not playing Lamar Jackson in our showdown lineup, and I don't want to make that mistake with Jalen Hurts. So I definitely think Jalen Hurts is going to be a key play.
Okay. I know you did some work digging in with Pro Football Focus and some of these matchups for these receivers. What's your take there?
Yeah, Anthony Brown is projected to match up with Devontae Smith, and Pro Football Focus has Anthony Brown as the cornerback that's allowed the most receiving yards this season. With 176 and also 2 touchdowns. So Devontae Smith, he leads the team with a 26.4% target share. And so I think that he's going to have a big bounce back game after he was kind of held in check last week against San Francisco. Devontae Smith should be pretty heavily targeted this week. So I definitely like Devontae Smith as number 1 receiving option for the Eagles.
Okay. Yeah, and of course, the thing to keep in mind with these matchups and some of the numbers that we'll share on the show or with our members about where guys line up and the routes that they run is it's rare that you'll get a 100% matchup. These are little edges here where we give a little bit of a bump to a guy or we knock him down just a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned Ertz, and this is an area in Philly that has had great production in recent years, but it can be difficult because of Goddard and their depth there. So, this week we've got Goddard at 6,600, Ertz coming back off of COVID, like you said, at 2,200. Goddard's been a little bit more productive, but you get a discount on Ertz. Any interest there?
Yeah, I think you probably would play Goddard more towards the cash and then play Ertz in your GPPs. I think that's the way I would look at that. Because I think Goddard's still going to get the majority of the targets, especially with Ertz just now coming back and having to reestablish himself in the lineup. So
fair enough. If there's room left in your lineup, do you want to make way for Sanders or Gainwell?
I'm not sure how I want to approach the running game with the Eagles. Dallas has only allowed the 12th fewest fantasy points to running backs this year. But with that being said, teams have been throwing a lot more than they've been running against Dallas. Brady threw it 50 times, and then Justin Herbert threw it 41 times. So if the Eagles decide to run the ball with Sanders, I think those opportunities will be there for him to get a couple big carries. But overall, I think they're going to favor the passing game and Jalen Hurts' scrambling attack too.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like that. Where teams just haven't run it as much against Dallas. But in terms of the run blocking advantage, 49% according to PFF for Philly. So it could work out well if they go that route again. The danger with investing in one of these running backs is you might have Hurts take the rushing TDs for himself. And Gainwell has been gaining on Sanders, if you will, with 11 and 8 touches the last couple of weeks. So he's, a real factor that can hamper Sanders' ceiling.
Yeah. Has he been getting red zone carries, Gainwell?
He did score on the ground in game 1
Okay.
against Atlanta, and so, that had all the Sanders
Yeah.
owners,
I'd say he could
season long,
vulture, he could
had
vulture
them up
a
in arms.
touchdown.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at Dallas here. They did get back to 500 with that field goal at the buzzer against the Chargers. And speaking of, let's start with the Dallas backfield because it's a tricky one as well. We've got Zeke, the all-timer,
Yeah.
but Mr. Pollard he's a real factor for Zeke. Pollard, 13 carries last week for over 100. He also caught 3 balls for 31. And this has got to be the first time in history that Zeke is 8,400 and his backup is 7,600 on DraftKings.
Yeah.
So, really tough situation there. It is a good matchup. They have an even better run blocking advantage of 54% on PFF. So I don't mind going with one of those guys in a showdown slate. We've got some injury issues with the wide receivers. Gallup is still out. And as you noted, as we were chatting before the show, we've got Cooper, with some cracked ribs. He's a little bit less than 100%. Cedric Wilson jumped onto the scene last week with Gallup out, but he only had 2 for 20. That whole game was a little bit disappointing. We were looking for more output from both sides and more scoring. Didn't get it. I would think he would do a little bit better than that. CeeDee Lamb, has got to be the guy we trust the most, I would think. He's more expensive than Cooper on DraftKings, but I feel better about his volume and his health. So, I'd like to get him out there. And then the tight ends, it's sort of like Philly. Now it's Schultz and Jarwin, and they like to share the duties. Both solid players, and they seem like if it was just them, they'd be, borderline tight end 1 in the NFL. This week, Jarwin's a little bit cheaper than Schultz on DraftKings. He's only 3,000, so I'm kind of looking there for value. And if I can, I'd like to get Dak out there as well. I think he'll be up for this matchup. So it's just a matter of playing with the price tags a little bit and strategizing about who the MVP is going to be, the captain, so you can afford these studs.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you were talking, I was thinking that myself. Like, you may just want to just play Dak because there's a lot of uncertainty at all these other positions. You don't know if it's going to be Cooper or if it's going to be Lamb or if it's going to be Pollard, if it's going to be Zeke. So Dak should be able to get, a good share of the points no matter what. So that should be a good safe option. And then you could, maybe play Pollard and DraftKings for his receiving yards, and then look at Zeke more for FanDuel. But those are just some options and thoughts ahead.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned it. We do need to strategize with what contest we're in, no doubt about it. And we like to play cash games with a more conservative lineup, and so we build a different lineup for our members for those contests specifically, and then we configure the GPP lineups with a more upside, a little more risk, a calculated risk to try to smash. And Thursday night, I gave out 6 lineups, 5 of them cashed. And so you can, build different lineups for different contests.
Absolutely.
And that's what we do for you. We work really hard to get everybody ready for each of these matchups in each of the different formats on DraftKings, FanDuel, and Yahoo. So jump in with us. We're going to keep working on it here until kickoff. We still have about 24 hours before your Packers kick off, Crash.
Yeah, we do. And that's obviously the game I'm looking forward to the most this weekend. But both games should be good games. I have enjoyed watching Dallas a little bit more since Mike McCarthy went down there. So I've kind of cheered him on a little bit and wish him the best. So, yeah.
There you have it. Yep. It's a Packers night throughout primetime, Sunday and Monday night because of McCarthy. That's a good point. All right. Well, that will do it for the Primetime show here this week. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Please do like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. and hit the alert button so you're ready for the podcast next week. We'll be back again for the Thursday night show, and then get you ready for all the games next Sunday and Monday as well in week 4. But we've got week 3 to get after here. So good luck preparing on Sunday for all your contests, and let's get after it. So on behalf of Crash Davis and the rest of the DFS Coach Talk team, I'm Andrew Hanson. We'll see you next time as we look to crush it in DFS.